Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Gabrielle, Reid, Head of Advisory at Pangea-Risk, and I'm thrilled to host today's short session highlighting a recent collaboration with our partners at Standard Bank. Today's webinar is all about reimagining how we assess project and resource risk across Africa, and how together with Standard Bank, we are piloting a brand new analytical framework called the Localized Opportunity and Risk Evaluation Platform, or LAW. I am joined by my colleague, Bilal Bassiouni, our Head of Risk Forecasting. As some of you may have seen on our socials, Bilal has just been published in the Journal of Risk Management in Financial Institutions, where his peer-reviewed article introduced a breakthrough in forward-looking country risk forecasting that underpinned Pangea-Risk's own country risk methodology. And it was a pleasure to work with him on this new project. Bilal, a warm welcome and a huge congratulations.
Thank you so much, Gabby, and thank you for the kind introduction. I think the publication really lays the foundation for what we're exploring here today. As you know, when we speak about country risk, most of us think about rating agencies or the OECD's country classifications, or even our own indicator-based model here at Pangea Risk, which we published that article on. But these frameworks usually give us a view on how risk perils behave at the national level. So that and they are designed to assess countries as a whole, not the individual conditions that shape a project's real exposure or contextual environment. So in practice, we all know that risk does not neatly fit within national borders. The political and operational environment in one province will likely look very different to another. So a well-managed region in a so-called high-risk country can host projects that are entirely bankable, while others within the same jurisdiction may struggle with weak governance or poor infrastructure. So that gap between the sovereign view and the project reality is what we really set out to bridge with the law framework. The idea was to keep the rigor of the country risk analysis, but also extend it downward to capture the local governance environment, sector maturity, and the inherent resilience of the resource itself. Gabby, perhaps you can walk us through how that framework actually works in practice.
Thank you, Bilal. I'm sorry to have interrupted you there. And yeah, very happy to speak about the framework itself. But I think to take a few steps back first, at Pangea Risk, we believe that risk is not just something to avoid, right? Our main premise is that risk is something to understand and to manage. And you can do that with access to the right information and the right analysis. Now, our collaboration with Standard Bank's Energy and Infrastructure Finance team was born out of that shared belief. So together we asked a very simple but powerful question. How can we assess project level risk, not just at the country level, but in a way that is still credible, data-driven, and commercially usable? And it was that question that led us to develop the law framework, which adds a second analytical lens beneath that sovereign baseline, as you mentioned, Bilal, underneath that OECD country risk rating or even Pangea Risk's own country risk ratings. And this secondary layer aims to capture local governance, sector dynamics, and resource-specific resilience. At the heart, law looks at these three dimensions. Location. We look to address questions around how stable and functional is a subnational environment? What's the quality of governance, infrastructure, or community relations at the local level? Number two, from a sector perspective, is the industry that we're looking at mature? Is it well regulated, or is it new and volatile? And finally, we look at resource. Does the commodity or resource itself add a layer of resilience? think about how LNG versus copper or even cocoa behave differently in global supply chains. And we thought we needed to account for things like their strategic imperative, understanding their position within the global energy transition, for example. And by combining these lenses, we start to see critically bankable factors at the sub-sovereign level, perhaps where sovereign ceilings might be seen as too harsh, or in some cases, too lenient. And of course, this isn't theoretical. We've already piloted the law framework in several markets. We've looked at Angola, the DRC, Mozambique, and a few others. And Bilal, I know you've looked at these quite closely, and I feel like some of the results have been eye-opening.
Absolutely, Gary. So as you mentioned, we tested the law framework and piloted across several locations, including Angola, DRC, Mozambique, and Ghana. And we chose these countries because each of them represent a very different mixture of political stability, local governance, and also the type of resource that goes into those economies. So what the pilot so far confirmed at the national risk that the national risk ratings alone tell a part of the story. In every country, we examined local conditions either improved or worsened the picture depending on where the project was situated. And there are localities that remain investable even in high risk jurisdictions, and others that lag despite the broader national stability that that country was projecting. So that is where this tool becomes quite a valuable tool for institutions. It provides an evidence-based way to see those differences clearly and act on them. And as you mentioned, Gabby, earlier, this is already moving from modeling to application. We are building a live dashboard that integrates OECD and our own data at Pangea-Risk with local and sectoral models to produce transparent and comparable scores across regions and commodities. So the aim here is to make this complex project level risk assessment usable, evidence-based, and generally comparable and easy to use for our clients.
Thank you, Bilal. This collaboration between Pangea-Risk and Standard Bank really reflects a simple but transformative idea. But understanding risk is its source to unlocking opportunity. Now, I had a chance to speak with Ralph Gunn from Standard Bank's Energy and Infrastructure Finance team earlier today to get his perspective on how frameworks like law can reshape how we evaluate and finance projects across Africa. I am joined by Ralph Gunn, Senior VP, Energy and Infrastructure Financing at Standard Bank. Ralph, thank you for joining me. It's great to have you here to share Standard Bank's perspective on the proposed platform. Perhaps firstly, you can speak a bit about the collaboration between Pangea-Risk and Standard Bank.
Well, thanks, Gabby. It's been an absolute privilege to work with yourselves, Pangea-Risk and the Standard Bank. We are passionate about African continent and getting to understand the African continent better. And it's been wonderful to be able to work with yourselves on what we think is pretty innovative in getting into a little bit more detail and nuance on what the risk is like, a localized risk on the African continent. And so it's been a wonderful experience thus far, and we really do look forward to working more with you guys on continuing this, shall I say.
Well, thank you. And it's been a privilege and a pleasure working with you and your team as well. From Standard Bank's perspective, why is it important to move beyond a country level risk assessment when evaluating African infrastructure or even resource-based projects? And how does a framework like the law add value to your investment decision-making process?
Yeah, thanks, Gabby. I think the big debate that we always have on the continent is either the bankability debate, whether something is bankable or not bankable, or the other one is the amount of time it takes to close a deal on the African continent. And I think that we use country risk significantly, and it's a significant input into our evaluations. But so often there's this nuanced story attached to the project that is based on a resource or the bit of infrastructure that is being developed. And we then have to go and delve into detail and try and understand the local context and whether that context is different to a more macro view of the jurisdiction that we're operating within. And typically, let's be honest, a lot of the frontier markets are on the African continent. And so a lot of this discussion and debate ends up being on the frontier market sort of profile when it comes to country risk assessments. And we believe there is a nuanced story to some of these bankable projects on the continent. And something like the lorry or the lore is assisting us in bringing up rich data that is starting to tell the nuanced story, the reason for why something could actually work, or have we forgotten some other aspect of the risk, and so it could actually worsen maybe. But getting into the nuance is what is most useful for us, and getting a single view of this story, this nuanced risk story, is in many respects so useful for us because it cuts down time for us having to do that digging deeper to get the localized understanding, and B, it adds to whether this is something we should be exploring or not, because is it going to enhance given the localized context, etc. And does is the market there for it? And some of those aspects I think we've together try to capture inside this methodology, and hopefully that's going to assist us in speeding through our investment decisions quicker.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And of course, thank you so much for your efforts on the initiative so far. There's definitely more to come.
Great, and thank you, Gabby, to you and the Pangea-Risk team. It is a great journey that we're starting off on, and hopefully there's going to be some great benefit coming from this nuanced story. Thank you.
Law is still in its pilot phase, but already it's showing us how to navigate African project risk with greater confidence and nuance. We invite you all to connect with us, whether it's to pilot law as a tool for your own portfolio, explore tailored assessments, or simply continue this conversation. Thank you, Bilal, and thanks to everyone for joining us today.